Welcome to the Streets.mn podcast, the show where we highlight how transportation and land use can make our communities better places. Coming to you from beautiful uptown Minneapolis, Minnesota, I am your host, Ian R. Buck. In our last episode, we learned that before Scott Dibble and Frank Hornstein were transportation champions in the state legislature, they were young activists fighting against a highway expansion. In this episode, we'll meet some of today's young activists who are going to be the next generation of transportation champions. First, we'll talk to Asanti, who has been doing an internship with our streets. For how long has that been going on?
For a little over a year now.
Okay, nice. And is there like a time cap on it? Like, how long do you expect it to be going?
There's not really a cap on it. I'm sort of like just there interning, and sometimes like I go to their meetings or I join in on events they do. But as of right now, there's not really like an end date for my internship.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, so let's kind of back up to the beginning, right? Like, what got you interested in urbanism in the first place?
For me, honestly, it started pretty randomly. I started out at the Best Buy Teen Tech Center that used to be in Summit Academy. And I did an internship there. It was a tech internship. And then I got offered to be a part of a youth advocacy grant. And with that youth advocacy program, we got to pick what we worked on. And the project that we chose was focusing on Olson Memorial Highway and the way it's set up and the safety issues around it. So during that internship, what we did research. We saw it had one of the highest crash rates in Minneapolis. And we're we want to change this. So we advocated, we reached out to people, we talked to other businesses in the area, and they all agreed that this was something that needed to be fixed. And pretty much what happened is our streets also heard of it. So they also now have a project around it. But what we did to kind of emphasize how this highway is dangerous is we looked at the amount of crashes that were there. We looked at the death toll, the accident, civilian accidents. This one kid that went to Best Buy, the Teen Tech Center, he got hit by a car. So we interviewed him, we interviewed some other people, and overall, it was a almost collective agreement that this highway needed to be fixed. And I think as of right now, the speed limit did get lowered. They put buffers around the walkways, making it longer. And they also reduced the lanes from, I believe, 3 to 2, on each side.
Nice. Yeah. And so that was you were combining publicly available data about crash statistics with some personal interviews and yeah. What do you call that? That's I
think testimonials.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's really cool. That's an awesome project.
Yeah.
Does this tie into how you typically get around town? Do you have a driver's license yet? Do you have access to a car, or are you, relying on transit and bikes and stuff?
I rely on a car. The area I live in, I currently moved from Brooklyn Park to Coon Rapids, and it's not walkable. If I wanted to walk to Cub or the gas station, it would take me 30, 40 minutes, and I'd have to cross major roads, and it's just not safe.
Yeah.
And even when I lived in Brooklyn Park, it was the same issue. There was no sidewalks, and when there were, it would go for a block and then cut off, or I'd just have to be walking on the street.
Yeah. So yeah, you definitely have that perspective on things. All right, so student advocacy is pretty common, right? But we typically think of it being about big national issues, anti-war protests on college campuses, that kind of thing. So how, when you talk to other high schoolers your age, how aware are they about, urbanist issues?
For me, the people I've spoken to about this issue is that most teens feel they feel the urban issues, but they're not realizing the issues. They will go for a walk and the sidewalk will cut off. They'll be upset, but it's they just walk around it and walk on the street. Or while they're biking, there's no bike lane. It's just they realize the issues, but they don't understand how it actually affects them in a sense.
Or do they understand that it doesn't have to be this way? Like this was a choice that somebody made?
Most did understand that, but
okay.
some thought it was just how they wanted how they wanted the area to look. You know, some areas they focus more on aesthetics rather than the actual people. Like if you look in some neighborhoods, my old neighborhood, only my like road had a sidewalk, and once you got to the end of my block, it was just no sidewalks.
Yeah, that the suburban ideal in quotes, yeah. Right? Yeah. All right, so you did that advocacy project with the Teen Tech Center, and then that led into Our Streets. Our Streets became, you know, kind of a partner on that. Is that right?
Yeah. I got offered the internship through like the Tech Center and Our Streets. They reached out to one of the workers at the Tech Center, Sarah, and she spoke to me about the opportunity to be an intern there. And I'm like, yeah, like, let me go for it. It's it's new. It's something I've done recently. So I'm like, this is something I can do. I want to do it.
Nice. Yeah. And so what has your, you know, have you been mostly still focused on Olson Memorial Highway, or is this you know, what other stuff have you touched during your time with Our Streets?
During my time with Our Streets, I mainly focused on a new campaign they're trying to launch. It's to prevent the expansion of a highway 252 that goes into 94. I wanted to focus on that one due to the fact that was the road I used to live on. Like my house was, I can get straight to the highway from there. And I'm thinking, like, if they expand this, if I still lived there, what was going to happen to my house? I have friends that live in the area too. So it's like, what will happen to them and their homes and their health when this highway does get expanded, if it does? It's
so important to have that local connection and that awareness of who's there and who's going to be affected. And yeah, absolutely.
And it was also, to me, like, I know the effects of how cars are, like the carbon emissions, how it like can raise asthma in areas due to the air pollution. So it's like, my little brother, he has asthma. So what would have happened to him if they did expand the highway and we lived right next to it?
Yeah. Or like, it's so hard to prove a negative or disprove a negative, but like, you know, would he have developed asthma if you had been living farther away from a highway, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to know.
It is. And it's also like, I was a part of some of the PAC meetings for the 252 expansion, and I saw their like ideal, like what they wanted, like their mock imaging of it. And they showed an example off of 73rd Avenue. That's where my house was. And they had an above highway and a below highway option. And the above highway went right to my house, my old house, to the yard.
Wow.
So it's also like the excess traffic that would come, like, and then kids can't even play in their yards. So it's so many negatives to expand a highway, and especially there's really no proven benefit for it. Like, they say it will quicken traffic, but we also see in Texas they have, wasn't it a 23-lane highway, if I'm remembering right? And they still have like insane traffic.
Right. It's whatever number you think of, it's probably more, and it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they added more. Like they got to 20. What makes you think they're not going to get to 30? And It's also, it's dangerous to have that big of a highway, especially like you're on the far right lane and you're trying to exit to the left. How are you going to get there?
Yeah.
And be safe? And
it's so frustrating to hear like the metric of, well, we need more lanes to speed up traffic being given, when it's like, well, speeding up traffic is going to make it more dangerous, you know, for like, like we want slow traffic.
And there's also so many other options that can be taken. Like, our main source of transportation shouldn't just be cars. There can be buses. I know there's buses in Minneapolis area, but there's none that run up to Blaine. My aunt, she lives off of Lexington, and there's no buses that go up there. So there's ways that we can like limit how many cars are on the highway by introducing more public transportation.
Yep. Yeah, I think Blaine is one of the areas where they recently introduced Metro Micro. And so it makes me more interested in visiting Blaine than I ever have been before.
Yeah.
Because when you improve the transit, it's like, yeah, I can get around.
Especially for those who, like, some people can't get their license due to like health issues, or, you know, some people are just too young to get their license. And it's just like those spaces being able to get there through public transportation is better. You can try new places, visit new businesses. It benefits the local area and places farther away since they're able to now visit there.
Yeah. What has the dynamic felt like for you as a student in urbanist advocacy spaces? Have you felt like your ideas are being heard by the community?
For me, with our street, I feel like my thoughts and like ideas are being heard, because like I'm also like, just because I'm younger doesn't mean I'm not seeing everything as well. Like I can see the sidewalk is being cut off. That's not good. How are people supposed to get around? I noticed that adding lanes isn't going to benefit us, especially it'll just create more traffic. So I feel like in my experience, I feel like I'm being heard and my opinions are taken into account. But I know for like other areas of advocacy, as well as like different nonprofits, is like sometimes they're not being heard properly, or like they're just being ignored.
Mm-hmm. That would be a very frustrating experience.
Yeah.
What have you learned, or have there been any experiences that you've had that you weren't expecting?
Some experiences I've had was I got to meet like so many new people. I've got like Ilhan Omar.
Oh, wow.
In my life, I never thought I'd be able to meet her. And I got to meet her at an open street event, I believe. It was for also Memorial Highway. And it was just like, wow, I'm actually like meeting her and getting to talk to her. And it was great. Like, I don't know. I felt like that's something I would have never been able to do without the help of like trying to become an advocate and like help people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Were you able to keep it chill, or like?
Yeah, I was able to keep it chill, but I'm, like inside, I'm like, oh my god, I get to meet her. Especially since like I'm Muslim as well, and I'm from East Africa, so like seeing an East African girl like do something that almost has never been done before, it's like, wow, like you're amazing and I want to be you.
Yep. As a jaded, older person in the advocacy spaces, I'm only 33. Sometimes it feels like our hard work doesn't give us the outcome that we're looking forward to. So what keeps you optimistic so that you can continue advocating?
I think it's seeing the small changes in things, like for Olsen Memorial Highway, when I was trying to, doing that youth advocacy grant, I like the small changes we saw afterwards, the lanes being reduced, the speed limit lowering. It's like, even if it's not a lot, it's still something, and it's still helping people. It's still benefiting those around it. And I think also what keeps me motivated is that just because it's not working now doesn't mean it won't work in the future. Like you'll never succeed if you stop, is my mindset. Like this is more like a younger term, but you miss every shot you don't take.
Sure.
Like a basketball thing.
Yeah. Do we need to get our head in the game, right?
Yeah.
That's High School Musical is more from my era. What are you planning on doing after you graduate? Do these advocacy experiences factor into that at all? Yeah,
I finalized what degree I wanted. I want to be a social worker. I want to go into social work. It's something that I believe fits me. I like helping people, advocating for people, and especially being able to help, like, if I do become a social worker, like help the youth, be able to motivate them, especially if I'm able to like even help them become an advocate. Like, it's something that will benefit, like help me continue my advocacy work and benefit those who I get to help. And it's also with the social work degree, you don't only have to go into social work, you can also do other advocacy work. So it's like, if I do go into social work, then I don't have to stop advocating. And I that's something I really like to do. I love advocating. I love helping people and changing things that I see as wrong.
That's awesome. Yeah. And having the perspective of like how all of these different areas like tie together. We can't talk about transportation without also talking about housing, and we can't talk about housing without also talking about land use. And, and you know, the effects that all three of those have on people's lives and how they're able to support themselves, and you know, and then that comes back around to affecting the transportation and housing and, you know, whatnot. Like, it's all interconnected.
Yeah. And that's like something that is really big in just the advocacy scene in general. Because if you're advocating for one thing, then it's more likely than not that someone else is advocating for the thing that connects to what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always great when you meet those people and you get to understand what they're working on, what you're working on. And it's really just a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That community building aspect is huge for sure. Well, Asanti, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Next, let's chat with Michael, who goes to Harding High School, but recently got connected with a Discord server that's a social space for transit activists at the U of M. What got you interested in, like, urbanism as a topic?
Well, I'd say, you know, like improve, because I use transit a lot. I mean, especially like with my friends. So I was like, how can I make this even funner and even better, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, huh. So I just looked into it and I was like, oh, all these organizations. And, you know, now it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like, I kind of want to go into this as a career, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, so you use transit a lot, which I think is fairly unusual for kids who grow up on the east side of St. Paul. And when I was working at Harding, you know, when we were coming back from the pandemic and we had like a severe shortage of bus drivers, that's when we, like, all of St. Paul Public Schools shifted to using Metro Transit instead of yellow school buses. I hear that they've gone back to yellow school buses. Is that true at Harding?
That is true. And they also removed the option to get any bus card from SPPS, like during the school year from Harding. So, yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because during that time, like, my little brother was attending Harding as a high schooler, and he really enjoyed having that bus card because on weekends he would be like, yeah, my friends and I are just going to, like, jump on a random bus and see where it takes us. And I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, that was my favorite part about the bus cards. I mean, really, everyone did after school activities. Everyone would just go hang out. It's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go on to 63 and see where it takes us. It's like, it was always kind of fun like that. But without the bus cards, it's definitely died down in that kind of activity.
Right, yeah. I remember, like, nobody told me to do this, but as, like, one of the only staff members who biked to school, I felt a responsibility to, like, make a bunch of bike and transit maps for students of the areas surrounding Harding to try to make it easier for, you know, to, like, to shift the narrative a little bit, right? Because at the time, like, the principal who we had, she lived way out by Afton State Park. And just like,
wow.
Like, public transit was not a part of her lived experience whatsoever. So she wasn't doing a whole lot to, like, push that forward as a positive thing for students. So I was trying to kind of, like, bring the other perspective. Yeah. Okay. So student advocacy is not an uncommon thing. But usually when we societally think about student advocacy, it's like big national issues like anti-war protests. So when you're chatting with your high school peers, like, how aware do they seem to be of, like, urbanist issues?
Well, I'd say definitely they're less talked about than other issues, especially with, like, Palestine and other things. Transit issues aren't really focused on. But when I bring it up, I mean, people are interested, but not a lot of people hear about it, you know, other than me. So I don't know how that's going to be afterwards when I leave Harding. But yeah, I say urbanism is not top of the list. But when it is brought up, they're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I was, like, with the Purple People, when they had the community meeting in Maplewood not too long ago, I told some of my friends about it, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that was going on. They've been kind of more like, oh, Michael, how's the Purple Line going? And I'll tell them. It's like, so definitely, people will stay engaged if they actually know about it.
Yeah. Are there any particular, like, things right around the Harding campus that students are kind of, like, oh, I wish that it was like easier to walk to wherever, without having to like cross a busy street or something like that?
Well, I'd say there's not much particular issues that people bring up, but like especially with this is more of like that's a little farther out than Harding, but the Earl Street like bike infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
that's been like a small conversation with some of my peers, and also with the Gold Line. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish it was easier to get to the Gold Line because the Gold Line's I think a 15-minute walk.
It's
It's
a
all the
bit
way
of
on
a
Etna.
hike. Yeah.
It's a bit of a walk. So it's like, oh man, if I had a bike, but it's like I don't want to bring a bike. So it's like, oh, bike share topics, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the big conversation right now.
Yeah, just having any wheels to go, just because it's almost all downhill from Harding to the Gold Line station. Yeah, so you're in this Discord server. Are there any other like, is it all just talking about trains and excitement about trains, or is there advocacy push in that group? What have you been involved with?
Oh, well, that's how I heard about this. In the server, it's not just trains, you know. I thought it was gonna be about trains, but then like, like it's not just trains. So there's like a transit part where they talk about like just general transit topics. There's transit like they talk about all sorts of transit stuff. And then there's also an advocacy part. That's where I heard of this because I was like, wait, I was looking through, I was like, oh, Streets and Men. And then I was like, oh, Ian Buck. And I was like, okay, I got to get on this.
Are they really active with like the I-94? I know there's a group that's like pushing for rail in the rethinking I-94 process.
Well, I'd say I haven't seen much about it in the server. I mean, I'm kind of new, so they probably have talked about it, but I'd have to dig deeper.
Yeah. What grade are you in?
I am a senior.
Okay, cool. So not too unusual to be like hanging out with some college students in this advocacy space. Yeah.
But I mean, I'd say it's still kind of odd. I mean, I would have got into it earlier if it was easier to know about these kind of groups. I only heard about like Move Minnesota, Streets and Men, and like the Discord server this year. So it's like, why was it so hard to find out about you guys?
Yeah. I mean, because how did you find out about that? It's kind of a student server at the University of Minnesota, right? So yeah, like how does a high schooler on the east side of St. Paul stumble across a group like that?
Well, I'd say there's layers to it, 'cause, Tim Marino?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So me and Tim Marino were talking at a Move Minnesota event, and he was like, I got to add you to the server. And then I ended up in the server. He was like, okay, that's fun.
Nice. Yeah, okay. Yeah, when Tim moved to the east side, I got him connected with the Purple people. So that's, I'm glad that everything's like coming back around. It's, all these connections.
Everyone's connected.
So what has the dynamic felt like as a student in urbanist spaces? Obviously, in that particular server, almost everybody are students. But like, have you, like, when you go to the Purple People events and stuff, like, have you felt like your ideas are being heard by the community?
Well, I'd say definitely it's a lot of talking at me, But I mean, the Purple People, they're really good at integrating me into the space, even though I don't really have anything I really bring to the table right now. But yeah, I had an idea about like outreach things during like any time of the year during the National Night Out stuff. We were gonna proceed with that, but it was a little like we just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they at least listened to the idea. They at least entertained it. I like that.
Nice. And your perspective as like a heavy transit user, I hope, is being heard for sure.
I mean, you don't really hear about youth being involved with transit a lot, so I guess that's like the most important part of me. It's like, oh, he's not 20 to 100 years old talking about transit. I'm like,
what have you learned, or what experiences that you weren't expecting have you had?
Well, I'd say I didn't expect it to be this easy and this difficult to really be involved. Like the Purple People, I just asked to join and they just let me in. But then to actually like do things like with Move Minnesota, I need to be 18 in order to actually like do any of the bus canvassing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There are other activities. So it's like, it's kind of hard, especially it's like, I'm not going to turn 18 till June. So it's like kind of dumb, but I get it,
Yeah. I imagine there's liability stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes, when you've been in an advocacy space for a while, sometimes it seems like our hard work doesn't give us the outcome that we're looking for. So what keeps you optimistic so that you can continue the fight?
Well, Well, I'd say the biggest thing that keeps me optimistic right now is like I'm young. I mean, like some of these people are like 50 plus. They won't see the fruits of their labor.
Mm,
Even if like especially with the purple line and how the bus lanes are turning out right now. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a bummer, but
yeah.
I still probably at least have like 50 years to live on average. So like, I'm not gonna sweat it too much. There's everything changes eventually. So it is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, as much as people sometimes like to think of their like neighborhood as a static, unchanging, like I moved here because it's like this and it's always gonna be like this. Like, no, that's the city's changed. That's kind of what they're for. What are your plans for after high school? Have these advocacy experiences factored into, like where you're planning to go after this?
Well, definitely. I mean, I was a part of the youth leadership rethinking I-94 youth leadership program,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, MnDOT has some pretty cool careers, especially related to that project in particular. So I
Mm.
wanted to see how I could get involved in that. So I've been looking at like various majors, communications, things to keep it broad, but I might have to really go into like transportation themed things in order to really stay involved in urbanism.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Nice, nice. Has the fact that like this Discord server that you found that it's based at the University of Minnesota, does that make you like more likely to pick that as a university to go to?
Well, definitely. Now that I kind of know some people, know some clubs there too. So it's like, oh, I feel like if I go there, I won't be alone. There's definitely a big community of like urbanists and other things. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. U of M, we'll see how that goes. There's other complications with it.
Sure, sure, yeah. But I mean, that's it's good to know for colleges
Just in
that
case.
like if they foster a good, healthy like environment of student advocacy groups, like that can attract students to them for sure.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me. Have a good day.
Finally, we'll chat with Thomas, who was astonished during his sophomore year when a letter he wrote to MnDOT ended up landing him a meeting with project staff. Thomas, I understand that you have been getting involved with urbanism advocacy stuff. I know when you were a student in my class in particular, you turned in a couple of assignments that were like, you made an educational app about induced demand, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was special. It talked about the Katy Freeway and why Amsterdam is doing things right and why induced demand is bad. And that was my first ever coding project. And I'm like, part of it was, of course, like, okay, this probably will help my grade, but also it was the first idea that came to mind. I'm like, I got to make an app about this.
When you say perfect. You thought it would help your grade, you mean that like because you know that I bike commute and I'm in the advocacy space, yes. You're like, I'm gonna play to the audience here. Okay.
Exactly. If you were a pickup truck enthusiast, maybe I could have made a truck app, but I don't really have the knowledge, so it probably wouldn't have been that great.
Right. Hopefully I'm not that shallow as a grader, but yeah. So I mean, it's always a little bit surprising to me when I like meet high schoolers who are interested in this. So I wanted to ask, like what initially got you interested in these kinds of topics? And kind of going along those lines, I assume that it has something to do with like how you typically get around town.
Yeah, I would say so. Initially, it was really just, I've always been a big fan of just watching YouTube. So kind of at one point I got a Not Just Bikes video recommended to me, and just it's very captivating how he does it. He just essentially, he's just like full out honest and like, this sucks. And he doesn't sugarcoat it or anything. And I was like, wow. And then I watched like the whole 30-minute thing and then more and more videos. And eventually I'm getting like, City Nerd and City Beautiful and these other urbanism channels. I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. And it makes me realize how nice some parts of Minneapolis are for walking and biking. And then just other parts, I'm like, you can't get around here without a car. And it just really made me like, it kind of opened my eyes. And then because I've always walked to school and I bike everywhere, I always loved biking. It's just been like, well, this is something that I could definitely be passionate about.
Yeah. I'm glad to know that the the ever-present algorithm is working in our favor sometimes.
Exactly. And then I think what really like pushed it to actually go from just watching YouTube to wanting to make a difference was around this time last year when the election results came out. I'm like, okay, so everything is going to be kind of going backwards now. And obviously there's a lot of stuff I can't control, but I want to do something. And,
Right.
at a local level where there's not as much influence, I'm like, perfect. So I reached out to our streets and I reached out to MnDOT, and one of the guys at MnDOT asked me to come in and meet with him, and our streets, they asked me to come meet with them. And it just kind of started from there. But it was really YouTube and then the election results and just motivation in general. I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm ready to make a difference.
Yeah, and that like desire to make a difference is pretty common among students, I think. We're all familiar with a lot of like student protest movements and things, but those but those are like usually about big national issues. We think about like anti-war protests and things like that. So, and obviously I work with high schoolers on a day-to-day basis, but like I don't know what you all are talking to each other about all the time. So like in your sense, like how aware are most of your high school peers about like these kinds of issues?
Yeah, and that's a question it's like an interesting one because some care a lot more than others. Like I know just last year telling people about all this, of course, I'm like, guys, check this out. Like, look how big of a difference turning this freeway into a boulevard would make. And some people were like, okay. But there were a few others who were like, whoa, that's actually like really cool. You're saving the world and stuff. And I've noticed that those same people who've told me that, I've been on Instagram, I'll sometimes get videos recommended to me just about like, the atrocious state of like pedestrian infrastructure in America. And it's like just becoming like a meme of sorts. And I'll see that people I know have liked it, meaning they watched it and actively were like, yeah, that's true. And then saved it. And those happen to be the same people that I talk to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I mean, that's still probably indirect. I'm like, okay, so there's some awareness, but at the same time, just being a teenager in, the United States, there's that sort of like, there's still that car culture and that just expectation that at some point you're going to be, driving around with your friends late at night, speeding down the highway, and it's like all fun. And I'm sure that some people would see removing highways as just getting rid of that experience altogether, which I don't think so. But, there could be, just as teenagers, there's probably opposing views.
Yeah. I wonder how different that, like the specific conversation about removing I-94, I wonder how different that would be if you and your classmates actually lived next to I-94, because
exactly.
I went to school at Central High School, and like the part of 35W that goes through South Minneapolis, like I never think about that. I never thought about like that part of town because I just never visited. So I could see it being kind of a little bit more abstract when we're talking about this part of I-94 that, potentially like you and your friends, who live near Washburn, like, it's St. Paul. Like, who even thinks about St. Paul?
Yeah, it's far away.
Right.
And we do have 35W going straight through here. And I know so many people who live on the other side of it who have to cross it every day.
Mm-hmm,
and that's just normal. And I'm like...
But that's a great conversation to have right there. That's like, okay, we're talking about I-94 here. But imagine if we were doing that in our neighborhood, like how much easier it would be to walk to school, right?
Exactly.
The problem is that's not part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And 35W was a neighborhood too, and I feel like a lot of people don't really realize that, but it totally was. And there's pictures of it beforehand just being leveled. I'm like, jeez, would hate to have that happen to our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they could have if they wanted, but they didn't for, racial reasons, which kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm. Now we touched briefly on some of the specific projects that you've been and organizations that you've been involved with. I know that you mentioned that you got in touch with somebody from MnDOT and got to meet with them. You've been working with our streets a little bit. So yeah, talk a little bit more about that. Like what does it mean for a high schooler to have a meeting with MnDOT?
Yeah, it was. I felt very like, whoa, this is just like a very adult thing, and I'm just a kid. So I thought that was
I would
kind
have
of
been intimidated
intimidating,
too.
but cool. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm here. I gotta embrace this. I made a nice presentation for them, and they really seemed to take me seriously, which I was not at all expecting, and I thought that was awesome. It was meeting with R Streets was a lot more like they weren't even like, some kid is coming in to present, we should give them our attention. They're just like, cool, a new member, let's do this. It was very much like you're just one of them at that point, and I thought that was really awesome and welcoming. And just meeting in January with Connie from MnDOT, he told me a bunch of cool stuff, and he was really, sympathetic with what I was talking about. And then I also did MnDOT's youth leadership program in February to March. Yeah, that was, for most of it was more about just getting people to want to join MnDOT for construction jobs and engineering jobs, that sort of thing. But really the first and last two meetings were about I-94 and the alternatives. And I was like very clear, like, why aren't we doing at grade? And I got a bunch of people all the other students, I got a bunch of them to kind of be on board with me. So when we did presentations at the end, I had my friend who also did an at grade presentation. Like, I did one. And then another kid did one about just how suburban commuters seem to be getting priority over people living in the actual area. And then just others that touched upon how highways aren't really the best. And I wonder if that made a difference or not, because you bring in a bunch of kids and some of them were just like, yeah, I want to get a construction job at MnDOT, and we're just there for completely different reasons. I'm like, cool, awesome. And then some of us were like, what are you guys doing? You should probably, like, why is MnDOT doing this?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was an experience. It was a really good one. A bit boring at times, but the first and last meetings where it was about the alternatives, I was really motivated and trying my best.
Nice. And then with the R Streets, like just feeling like you were just another member all of a sudden, what kinds of volunteer stuff did R Streets have you doing? Like, were you going out door knocking with them? Were you like...
Yes, I did quite a bit of door knocking.
Nice.
That was probably my favorite activity, especially there's this one guy named Nick, and he's super nice and super awesome, and just talking with him is just like, they know what I mean. They know what I'm talking about. It was awesome to not have to explain stuff. I could just say like a term and they just get it. So just hours of doing that. Some were, in the winter, and then the summer ones were really nice. And we had a decent amount of people answer their doors.
Mm-hmm.
And those who did were actually like, yeah, I-94 kind of sucks, and I'd be open to this. And what MnDOT's doing isn't really good. Like, we're kind of telling them about that. Some people had no idea what was going on, and other people already knew. And it was very nice to kind of tell people about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really the power of door knocking, isn't it? Like just starting that conversation, getting people aware of the issue in the first place. Yeah.
And then for those who didn't answer, we put in just papers with just about stuff, just really brief, nice visuals. So it actually looks like it's something you'd want to read.
Right. Yeah.
So even if you didn't talk, hopefully spreading the word a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, the rethinking I-94, the Twin Cities Boulevard project, the renderings that R Streets has come out with is the best example
They're so pretty.
And it's like presenting a positive vision instead of just saying the negative of like, this highway sucks. Like having a ready-made, like, this is what it could look like is so powerful. And I haven't seen any other, like, a better example of that strategy than when R Streets came out with their proposal.
There was this one guy who answered who he admitted to us after our conversation that he was like pretty conservative, and but because I think it was probably because of that visual, he's like, even though I'm like conservative, like this looks awesome, and it seems like why wouldn't I want this? I can still drive if I wanted, but I could also go walk to a new restaurant or something, and more people get to have houses. Like, what's the downside?
Right.
And I'm like, exactly. So it felt really good to see that. And I feel like the visuals definitely played a part there because you can see how great it looks.
Yeah. Now let's shift into talking about, some of the not so great parts of advocacy, right? Sometimes you don't get what you wanted. You put in a ton of work, you put all this energy, and you pour your heart out, and sometimes like the outcome that you wanted just didn't come to pass. So what keeps you optimistic so that you can keep advocating?
Well, yeah, I can definitely relate to that just because, even at this point, at grade is still not on the table by MnDOT. And I think, there's just been a growing shift to like, especially with the Trump administration, it's like, well, funding for kind of really anything, unless we make drastic DEI changes, isn't going to happen. So, there's just been a lot more added into it. And it does feel like, oh, great, I spent all that time and not much really happened. But at the same time, I'm like, they know what people want. They know what people my age want. They know what our streets wants. And the message has been sent. And I'm always thankful for the part that I played in that and hope to continue it. But yeah, I can very much understand what you're saying on that struggle there.
And that's like, I don't want to be patronizing here, but like, you're young, you haven't seen as many of these like fights so far, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I have one to my name, so it'll take time.
Yeah. We'll wear you down eventually. I hope not.
Eventually.
I hope. Yeah. I hope that you keep up the energy. It's
yeah, I gotta keep that fighting spirit.
What are your plans like after high school? Do these advocacy experiences factor into that at all?
I would say so. I want to live in a place that actually has good public transit and I can bike and I can walk places. So anywhere rural is off the table, and Sunbelt cities are certainly off the table. So it's a much narrow list when you look at the United States.
Yeah. I mean, I will say
Europe, but yeah.
Like, I went to college in Morris, Minnesota, right, which is very rural.
Oh, yeah. And
but everything in town is a 5-minute bike ride away. So it was like, oh, it's a perfect place to live without a car.
Yeah.
As long as, like, they used to have a shuttle that came back to the Twin Cities every weekend. They don't operate that anymore. But, like,
of course,
when that existed, it was like, oh, this is kind of like a car-free heaven. So yeah. I would say don't like just blanket discount all rural areas. There might be some that could work.
It's more just my general preference to want to live in a much larger city. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I know there are some really underrated rural areas that have awesome. It's like nice. It's walkable because it's just not even worth it to build all this car infrastructure when you have an existing small town from the 1800s.
Right. Yeah. The one stoplight town, as they say. And how about like, I mean, you're only in 11th grade, so you don't have to have like a career locked in, but have you thought about that kind of thing?
I have, because I've always been interested in just technology and computer science, but at the same time, I see the job market for that. I'm like, well, oh boy. So it's always been, urban planning and stuff like that I have a genuine interest in is not a bad second option. And maybe it's something I actually have to consider as what I would do. But at this point, I don't know. And I'm still studying computer science stuff. And until it really becomes apparent, I'll keep on that path. But it's certainly something I'll keep doing when I can. And just in addition, because it's awesome and I like it.
Yeah. And I assume that you are going to be interested in like, when you're in college, connecting with other college students for like advocacy work and.
Oh yeah. And if there isn't a club already, making one would be something I might do.
Yeah. You do seem to have that, the go-getter attitude for starting something.
Yeah. I'll be out there holding this sign like, hey, join this club. It's pretty cool.
Any other thoughts on anything that I didn't ask about?
How do you get more people involved in this sort of thing? Because I've found that you kind of have to have a pre-existing passion to really get people to join. And I've tried and it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me.
I think when we're talking about like students and like a school community, it can be really helpful to find something that's like specific, small and specific to that local area. I have a friend who like her kids go to Lindale Elementary School, and so like they worked really hard.
I went there.
Yeah, they worked really hard to get a I forget what they called it, but like a specific time of day right at the end of school where it was like no cars are allowed on the streets that are like directly adjacent to the school. So that like,
oh, okay. So then 34th, Grand, 33rd, and Pleasant, I'd say.
I don't remember. I think Grand probably was not. I think it was 34th, like the side of 34th that is adjacent to the school.
Especially because there's a thing that blocks the road, so it's really
so they had like anywhere. A car-free kind of pickup time in area, and that was like
that's awesome.
And they like had kind of a party there at the end of school every day. As all of the kids are coming out and finding their parents and whatever. And so like that piece of like hyper local, hyper specific advocacy work is something that like at an elementary school, the parents have to be the ones driving that change, right? But like at a high school or a college, the students can definitely be a big part of like identifying something that would be a positive impact for the school community, and then like convincing administrators and parents and, to get on board with it. So I don't know exactly what that looks like at Washburn. Thinking about the streets that are right around there. I mean, 50th gets pretty like crazy at the end of school.
I wonder if that there's like, that those buttons that you press, the bank buttons. Mm-hmm. To flash those lights across the street. There is one of those on 50th Street, and I wonder if that's there because of just students asking for it.
Could be.
I know the entire time I've been at Washburn, so I don't know.
Right.
It would make a lot of sense because 50th Street is very busy and it has those blind curves that cars come speeding around.
Yeah, that might have come from like there's a specific Safe Routes to School initiative that has like state funding behind it. So I wonder if that was a Safe Routes to School project. Yeah,
I really wouldn't know, but I also love seeing the city buses come to Washburn and just they bring a ton of people to school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that could have been so many cars. Thank goodness. Especially Washburn doesn't have a big parking lot because it was built before cars were even.
Yeah, Washburn has such a parking problem that they started putting cars up on the roof.
Yeah, I know.
For listeners who have no idea what I'm referencing, there was a group of seniors last year who dismantled an old car and then snuck it in piece by piece and reassembled it on the roof as their senior prank. So
it was so awesome. I don't know how my class is ever supposed to beat that because you just can't top that.
Right. Yeah. All right, Thomas, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I know this was multiple months in the making, but.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Streets.mn podcast. The show is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Non-Derivative license, so feel free to republish the episode as long as you are not altering it and you are not profiting from it. The music in this episode is by Eric Brandt and the Urban Hillbilly Quartet. This episode was hosted and edited by me, Ian R. Buck, and was transcribed by Parker Seaman, aka Strongthany. We're always looking to feature new voices on the Streets.mn podcast, so if you have ideas for future episodes, drop us a line at podcast@streets.mn. We're especially interested in covering activism on college campuses, so if you are involved in that, please reach out. Streets.mn is a community publication and relies on contributions from audience members like you. If you can make a one-time or recurring donation, you can find more information about doing so at streets.mn/donate. Find other listeners and discuss this episode on your favorite social media platform using the hashtag StreetsMNPodcast. Until next time, take care.